The war broke out, and from the very beginning, it directly reached its maximum scale. The Cybertronian civilization, which is fully armed and fighting hard, at the moment, facing the battle of the 10 realms that the whole universe is paying attention to, finally revealed some clues. Countless spaceships shuttle in space, blasting terrifying artillery fire from time to time, and there are a large number of shape-shifting diamonds that can be shape-shifted in vehicle form and combat form at any time, constantly active on the battlefield, full of weapons, close combat and long-range combat. Carry on your back and take action at any time. Moreover, on the surface of Cybertron, a large number of war weapons coordinated by Ultron were mobilized, and from time to time they launched long-range bombardments into the sky, with amazing power. What's going on with these mechanical life, and this planet? Queen Sind looked down on the battlefield indifferently, waving her whip from time to time, and her eyes were shocked. She saw with her own eyes that the famous shape-shifting King Kong seemed to have gone through thousands of trials. Every action was rehearsed countless times, so fast and ruthless. Well, she can understand it. After all, it is a mechanical life, and the thinking organ is inherently powerful. Incomparably, the computing power is surprisingly high, which is very reasonable. But this ability to change 25 bodies at will is very unreasonable. In the last second, he was still in the form of a humanoid with 2 hands and 2 legs. After a light was cast in his eyes, he could instantly shapeshift into a small spaceship, and still automatically copied the space weapons on the spacecraft? How can there be such a weird species in this world? It's too outrageous, and it's seriously inconsistent with the rules of the universe. After watching for a while, Queen Sind cursed, and watched her murderous and powerful flame army being pushed back by these steel bumps. If only the army is strong, it is understandable. But the numerous attacks blasted from the surface of Cybertron made Queen Sind even more angry. Snapped. Queen Sind slammed a whip on her adjutant, and roared. This is the information you collected. Why are there planets like living, able to cooperate with so many ant-like robots, and there is almost none mistakes? This is so weird. Queen Sind can't understand the power of Ultron at all, and there is still Ultron that has the terrifying supercomputer such as the magic ball to provide the control authority. What is the combination of an intelligent life and a supercomputer? Queen Sind, who is accustomed to the war, has a headache and a combination of masking. Roar. On the front line of the battlefield, a fire demon roared and rushed toward him with a grim look. First, he took a knife and sputtered his debut with a flame of supernatural power. Then he shot and grabbed the shape-shifting King Kong that had chopped it off, and then roared in the next moment. Pressing the opponent's shoulder with one hand, the other flame palm suddenly enlarged, grabbing the opponent's head completely, and then tore it fiercely. The violent sparks flickered abruptly and extinguished instantly, and the shape-shifting King Kong died in the hands of the fire demon. But in the next moment, before the fire demon roared to show off, several powerful attacks came over, staggering one of the fire demon. In the next instant, several figures approached, without any communication. Showing the subtle cooperation that seemed to be tempered, several sharp blades stabbed in the past at the same time, and with the powerful energy output, the fire demon was forcibly divided into corpses, watching the other party's burning corpse extinguished in the vacuum of the universe. These guys have more or less divine power on their bodies, and they have strong vitality. To some extent, all the people are soldiers. The clamp who led the team had a serious face, and his bloodthirsty fanaticism. With the battle with the fire demons, although there was an intensifying trend, he showed more calmness and solemnity. As a gladiatorial champion, calmness and patience are important elements for winning, and they are more important than hard power at special times. The clamp is constantly collecting information, and Ultron is collecting real-time data on the entire battlefield, constantly deducing the characteristics and strengths of various fire creatures, updating the database at all times, and transmitting it to every shape-shifting King Kong in the database. I have to say that this is too convenient. With powerful computing power and thinking efficiency, the shape-shifting King Kong can extract the desired information from the database in an instant, and then launch tactical targeting based on the enemy in front of them. But the more this is, the more powerful the Fire Demon clan makes the clamp look squarely. Divine power is really troublesome. I heard that in the Global Academy of Sciences, ambulances have carried a bunch of shape-shifting diamonds with awakening of scientists' genes. They have made Sekaiju's Divine Power series an important research topic, and I don't know when. Results. At this time, a roar with craziness and joy continued to spread in the shock of the divine power. The clamp turned his head to look, and his face suddenly went dark. A muscular man with an inexplicable blood-colored pattern on his body was carrying 2 axes on the space battlefield. Even if he was facing the fire demon, he killed him with a ferocious and fanatical face. The 2 axes were crazy. Cut around and cut. Even if his whole body is hurt, he also looks enthusiastic. War God Kratos. It is said that this guy is an important research result of the World Tree's divine power. But what is the matter with this messy divine power? Seeing this guy, the clamp felt a little headache. He did not fight with this war lunatic. Although he could win every time, it was getting harder and harder to win, and the opponent's speed was too fast. Kratos was opened by the entire Global Academy of Sciences, relying on the corpses of dozens of Protoss such as Asgard, Olympus, and Maya, to conduct crazy human experiments on Kratos. Experiments are extremely enthusiastic. It is said that I don't know how many times I have been near death, but the speed of becoming stronger is extremely ridiculous. How long has it been since a humble mortal from Olympus has become a ruthless character who can confront him with his grip? Moreover, the opponent's madness and fear of death are more exaggerated and extreme than him. This is a neurosis, and because of this, some guys have been crowned the title of God of War. Among the 12 gods of Olympus, there is indeed a god of war, of the gods. This mess has no tactics to find any chaotic supernatural power, it's almost. The skull of the clamp is a bit painful. How many Protoss divine power systems are this mixed? The ratio of the various divine powers of each shot is different, it is a mess, but this guy is able to adapt, and can use this characteristic to turn the enemy into a dizzy. Just when Clamp was in a bad mood, and angrily led his gladiator team, and once again tore a powerful fire demon. A whip suddenly struck, and instantly drew 2 of his subordinates into broken parts flying around, and flames rose, and these parts were burned out in an instant. Even the Clamp himself was madly mobilizing all energy reserves after resisting. Half of his body was shattered by this whip. The terrifying flame power is raging, burning the remaining body parts of the Clamp. Enough. A bunch of rubbish, even a new species can't win, I shot it myself. Martin, get out and make atonement for my father Serta. Queen Sind couldn't bear it, and finally dispatched herself. This battle was really ugly. The fire demon army she was so proud of was turned into such a ghost by these robots. If you can't push it in, let's not say, there is still a faint trend of regressing? In her heart, there was even faint anxiety. It is true that the combat power shown by these robots is too strong. There is no special power such as divine power or magic in her body. It's like this. Queen Sind looked cold, her eyes burst with endless anger. She tore through the battlefield like a shooting star, sweeping the countless fire demon and shape-shifting King Kong on both sides to one side. The flames were extremely violent and unbridled in this vast battlefield. Raged on. She rushed straight to Cybertron. Hiss. A sharp sword slashed down. Go away. Queen Sind had a cruel face. She caught the giant sword with only one hand, but was shocked by the powerful divine power from the giant sword, and raised her eyebrows. At the same time, she directly threw the whip in her hand. Optimus Prime retreated quickly, swiping the huge sword and slashed horizontally again, sputtering a large amount of sparks. This weapon carries the breath of Asgard. It seems that you have acquired Asgard's artifact heritage. Humph, it's interesting. Queen Sind flicked the flame whip, her face full of irritability. She drew it one after another, and fought with Optimus Prime. Soon, many terrible scars appeared on Optimus Prime's body, and the broken parts floated out. I'm looking for Martin, it's not like you. Queen Sind looked irritable. Optimus Prime didn't say a word, and was about to continue cutting over, but at this moment, his expression moved and he quickly backed away. Queen Sind snorted and rushed straight to Cybertron. Martin was her goal, to kill Martin and liberate her father Serta. Martin, get out, your queen is here. Queen Sind howled lowly, resounding throughout Cybertron. In an instant, Countless surface cannons turned, blasting fire to Queen Sind, and in an instant the horrible energy beams gathered, but after the terrorist explosion dissipated, Queen Sind stood impatiently in space, covered in flames. Burning, unharmed, overlooking the steel planet below. Where is the puppy barking, so can't wait to be my dog? Martin's expression was calm, and he appeared in outer space in an instant, standing a kilometer away facing Queen Sind. You finally came out. A hint of excitement flashed across Queen Sind's face, and it was more cruel. Although I don't know how you enslaved my father, don't want to use the same despicable means to enslave my father. Me. And you no longer have infinite gems, and you are now an ordinary level godfather at best. At the moment when the words fell, the flame whip had already been swung over, and the terrifying flame divine power gathered in this whip, carrying the terrifying coercion of crushing the fixed star system. Martin's face was extremely flat from beginning to end. At the moment he directly put on the Supreme God armor, and smashed it out with a whip. Boom. The boiling flame supernatural power, at the moment, as if encountering a terrifying air pressure, it began to explode, spreading flames, lighting up sparkling fireworks in the vacuum of the universe. Your father is on Earth, not in Cybertron, Martin said lightly. I know he is on Earth, but my stupid father can only be free if he kills you. Originally, he should be the king of Muspelheim. Definitely, I think I am more suitable than him, but this is not your reason for imprisoning him. Queen Sind looked fierce and kept shaking the whip, but she was surprised to find that no matter how much she used, she couldn't shake Martin at all. The other party's peculiar suit of armor gave her a kind of trouble. Good feeling. This is the armor you are proud of. I'm afraid it's stronger than the destroyer armor. Huh. How long can you hide in this turtle shell? Queen Sind sneered, waved the whip, all the powers gathered, and finally condensed a huge and extremely terrifying flame, which directly caused the vibration of the three realms in the upper court. This was a powerful blow from Queen-level Godfather. At this moment, it suddenly blasted towards Martin. Looking at the scene where Martin was completely burned by this terrifying flame, Queen Sind showed a frenzy of excitement on her face. Roar. The divine power was burned out, but the figure in the middle came out unscathed. Not only that, but there was no sign of damage on that armor. The terrifying flames seemed to be just as insignificant as a breeze. It's still too immature, far worse than the original Odin. Do you think that I can get to this point thanks to infinite gems? You think that without infinite gems, I won't even be able to deal with your kind of stuff? Martin acted calmly, and patted the non-existent dust on his body, and looked at Queen Sind's cold eyes with a vague indifference. Queen Sind's eyes widened. Why is this? How can a human being in a small area have this kind of artifact? Martin said lightly. You are just a barking puppy. How can you stand in front of me and bark? Queen Sind was enraged. In rage, she kept swinging the flame whip, but every time she was easily defeated by Martin. Her powerful supernatural power didn't stand out in front of Martin. Diaresis, no, you are just a mean villain. How could you have this kind of power? Queen Sind became more and more angry. Her own flame at the moment brought a trace of madness. It's worth playing with fire, and his personality is as violent as flames. I've heard Malkis say, you made a despicable deal with Odin, got my father's the eternal fire, and directly enslaved my father. You damn it. Queen Sind was a little mad and attacked Martin frantically, but these, in front of Martin, seemed more and more like wild dogs trying to prove that they were barking. The fighting spirit is commendable, it's just a bit silly. I have a good idea. Your father will be a dog for me. Come and be a puppy for me. The army under your command should also become my army. That's how it was decided. When I dominate the world tree, I made you the king of Muspelheim. Martin smashed a great punch with a punch and opened his arms. Queen Sind was furious. Good job. I was the king of Muspelheim, but I still use you to seal it. It's not my canonization, it's all heretics, all damn it. Martin's voice was cold, and finally lost his patience. At the moment, he stepped out and moved suddenly. There was a loud bang, and the terrifying power burst directly through the magical barrier of Queen Sind, like a terrifying Mephisto, with a punch. He directly punched Queen Sind's chest torture. Now, the fire of your life is mine. Stay with me and be company with your father. Martin grasped the fire of life, and with a movement in his heart, a large number of chains immediately stretched out from his body, instantly piercing the fire, winding it round and round. A sense of despair that has lost freedom and turned into a servant of others breeds in Queen Sin's heart. She has an angry and desperate look on her face. Do not. Queen Sin was planted, obsessed with the bewitching of Malkies, and deliberately attacked Martin directly with a large army, and she became Martin herself. I really don't know. The relationship between you and Serta is so good. He was the only one who died of thousands of heirs in order to train his offspring. You were actually willing to find me desperately for him. Martin pinched the desperate Queen Sin's neck and lifted it directly, as if holding the neck of a puppy's fate, and shook her deliberately. Some fire demons with bad heads saw this scene and suddenly roared and rushed over frantically to rescue their queen, but there were already many shapeshifting King Kong besieged from all directions with ferocious faces. Some crazy guys broke through the defensive line of the shapeshifting King Kong, and went straight to Martin, throwing a fierce flame. Boom. The red chaos force suddenly turned into a long river rushing forward, and directly annihilated the many fire monsters that had rushed over on the spot. A red light burst into Wanda's eyes, and chaos force swirled around her, exuding an aura of terror. From start to finish, Martin didn't even blink his eyes, but looked at Queen Sin quietly. I guess, you didn't come to save your father. You came to enslave your father. You free your father from the eternal fire. Queen Sin's struggling movements suddenly stopped, opened her eyes, and some dim flames burned forcibly, staring angrily at Martin. As everyone knows, Serta is extremely cruel in terms of cultivating offspring. He has enlarged the way of cultivating GU to the extreme. With thousands of outstanding offspring, only Queen Sin will die. It is hard for Martin to imagine that the last child left will have respect and loyalty to her father. You bastard, the eternal fire is my goal. Sooner or later, it must belong to me. It was you who colluded with Odin and took away what should belong to me. Queen Sin looked resentful, and opened her mouth to spout a fire that fell on Martin, on his battle helmet. What made Queen Sin desperate was that the helmet was still undamaged. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't even leave a trace on this terrifying armor. This is ridiculous. At this time, Martin had completely swallowed the fire of Queen Sin's life. From this moment on, Queen Sin was enslaved by him just like Serta. Order your subordinates to stop. From now on, the entire Muspelheim will obey my orders. Martin spoke lightly and released Queen Sin. Queen Sin looked fierce, and when she raised her hand, a flaming whip appeared to be slammed on Martin, but the next moment, she screamed. The fire of life was brutally ravaged and torn by Martin, and the shadow of death spread to her. Queen Sin suppressed the hatred in her heart and let out a sharp cry. In an instant, all the fire demon Dumang stopped suddenly, looking confused. All tribesmen, all return to Muspelheim, Queen Sin said. Can't retreat. You go to attack Wat Alheim and kill all the Dark Elves. This is my gift to the Dark Elves, covering the battlefield of the 9 realms with their corpses. Martin faintly left a sentence with an indifferent attitude. In an instant, the sky bridge opened, and the huge amounts of whirlpools swallowed the bewildered fire demons and passed them directly to the world of Dark Elves, Wat Alheim. Only the corpses of many fire monsters remained in place. This was the material specially left behind to conduct human experiments for the Global Academy of Sciences. You go too. If you don't kill all the Dark Elves there, I will kill you immediately. Use the blood of you and your people to pave the way for my noble status. Martin sneered and threw Queen Sin directly into the space bridge. Sometimes, he really didn't bother to waste time, let alone such an ambitious, vicious flame man. Wanda flew over and stood quietly beside him, at the moment couldn't help but whispered. These fire monsters are irritable, and excessive suppression may cause very troublesome consequences. I don't care about this. Since these guys take the initiative to provoke me, they must be prepared to be annihilated by me. Martin spread his hands, an indifferent expression on his face. Are these fire monsters very valuable? The research value is not low. At this time, on the distant Cybertron star, suddenly, roars and horrible explosions erupted, as if a horrible energy reservoir was detonated. Seen from space, ripples appeared on the surface of Cybertron. Well, has Starscream also started to act? There are many secrets hidden in the dragon. Even if the skin is cramped, he must dig out the secrets in his body. Martin glanced back, his face casual, beyond the world tree. Nidhogg and Malkis were quietly observing the battlefields around the world tree. When they noticed that Queen Sin's army disappeared, but suddenly appeared in Wat Alheim, Malkis's face changed completely. Damn, this bitch, dare to attack my world. Malkis was frightened and angry, and almost heard the wailing of many dark elves. His figure was about to move, but the next moment, Nidhogg's huge body stopped him. What do you want to do? Maleka's face sank. Niederhogg sneered. Don't forget you're in my agreement. In order to conquer the world tree. What does it mean to destroy a world? Anyway, it will not be annihilated. It will take tens of thousands of years before it will reproduce like locusts. Maleka's face was cold, with killing intent in his eyes. The red light in Niederhogg's eyes was full of malice. Suddenly, it moved and uttered a roar. Very well, my servant has acted. I, the great dragon Nidhogg, who devours the world, will use this Cybertron, who is incompatible with the world, will lay the foundation for greatness. In the world tree that is all playing with supernatural power, a Cybertron playing high-tech pops out. This sense of disharmony is like a thorn to the dragon who has been eating the roots of the world tree for too long. The magic dragon moved immediately, leaving Malekis behind, and Roar flew to the three realms of the upper court in a whistling, and went straight to Cybertron. Malekis' face changed, and finally gritted his teeth, suppressed his anger, and followed the dragon. Martin's threat is too great, and too weird, it's better to be the first to get rid of it. There were two level godfathers who took action, enough to kill this guy quickly. Maleka's face was cold. Soon, Nidhogg took the lead in reaching Cybertron's outer space, looking at the planet that seemed to be instantly turned into a battlefield, and the terrifying explosions that erupted on the surface, making Nidhogg happy. My great journey of devouring the world tree begins with devouring this planet. The dragon flapped its wings, and the huge black figure rushed towards Cybertron. A huge black shadow covers Cybertron's star. The dragon Nidhogg looked down arrogantly, showing satisfaction. My loyal servant, very good. I am very satisfied with the results you have made. You will become my dependent. Niederhogg looked more and more satisfied. Look at this chaotic planet. Look at the artillery fire and explosions everywhere. It is almost the end of the world, which makes Niederhogg, who likes destruction and disaster, feel ants. A small spaceship came to Niederhogg's side, and instantly shapeshifting became a Starscream. Starscream bends down deeply at the dragon, and respectfully said, Honorable World Destroyer Dragon, Great Lord Niederhogg, it is the honor of my Starscream to be able to serve you in my life, to be able to escape from the narrow the view overlooks a larger landscape, thanks to your guidance. Nidhogg laughed loudly. The terrifying sonic shock of the entire Cybertron star trembled violently, and large cracks appeared on the surface. Starscream, take it. This is my strength. You will be my eternal servant, person. Niederhogg threw a black mark with extremely negative divine power fluctuations on it, which directly drifted towards the red spider. Malkis, who hurried over, also saw Starscream at this time. Only at the first glance, he was immediately taken aback, with a deep suspicion on his face, because he smelled the same kind of breath. Starscream also raised his head respectfully, and instantly looked at Malekis. The two old Yinbi who had carved conspiracies and tricks into their bones were startled at the same time. The strange feeling of seeing the other one suddenly broke out in their hearts. There is a problem with this robot, Malekis said suddenly. No, there is no problem. Niederhogg looked at Starscream who had devoured his negative divine power, and immediately showed a satisfied look, and turned back Malkis's words. Where can I find such a loyal and capable servant? This is a talent who can trigger a rebellion on the entire planet, and Niederhogg is very satisfied. My dear lord, if I can, I will return to Cybertron, let my army destroy more enemies and clear the way for you. Starscream respectfully left this sentence, turned into a spaceship and left here in an instant. Huh, no brains. Starscream returned to Cybertron with a sneer. The Ultron Auxiliary Program said indifferently, Starscream, you have obtained Nidhogg's special power, your mission has been completed, and I will stop the crazy bombing of No Man's Land. Starscream nodded disapprovingly. In an instant, the chaos on Cybertron stopped abruptly, and everything fell silent. Niederhog, who was about to enjoy the planet, was stunned and watched this scene with a confused expression. Obviously, you were deceived, and that guy didn't take refuge in you at all. There was a sneer on Malekiz's face. Niederhog rage roared and his eyes were red. He was about to detonate the negative supernatural power of Starscream, and he became his servant, signed a contract with him, and he would use his life to abide by it. Roar. A terrifying roar came out. Then, there was no response. Niederhog suddenly lost the imprint of its supernatural power on Starscream, as if its imprint had been swallowed and digested by something in one breath. Who can wipe out my Niederhog's mark and contract in an instant? Niederhog flicked his tail irritably, and in a crash, he defeated some stars in the distance, and Malekith was also affected, and the whole person avoiding with an ugly expression. Niederhog screamed again and was about to rush towards Cybertron. It was about to open its blood basin and blast this planet into cosmic dust. Roar. A similar dragon roar suddenly appeared from Cybertron. Immediately afterwards, several ferocious steel dragons rushed directly into the vacuum of the universe, and uttered a threatening roar at Niederhog. What are these guys? Metal dragons. This kind of scrap iron toy, dare to bark in front of the great Nidhogg. Niederhog's face was furious, and the fooled anger rose up. At the moment he roared directly, and rushed to the opposite metal dragons that emerged from nowhere. The five-headed terrifying metal dragon, at the moment, facing the surprisingly powerful Nidhogg, his face showed fear. This guy is very strong, the strongest dragon I have ever seen, a metal dragon said solemnly. Shut up. Sharp claws, the giant ferocious troops are fearless. Even if the opponent is a universe god, they can't prevent us from defeating the opponent, the fierce tiger directly yelled. Well, we can't beat each other one-on-one. At any rate, it's a veteran-level godfather. According to my calculations, even if it fits together, it's not enough. Got to try. Five-headed giants looked at Niederhog, who was rushing in a flash, and immediately began to merge. Soon, a huge humanoid steel giant showed a sharp blade on the body, showing some dragon-like characteristics. Chongyun Xiao close black lens bracket, huge ferocious troops under the Decepticon Legion. Character. Manic, wisdom 40%, height, 27 meters. Energy. 31 million, body. Healthy close black lens bracket, power. Level Godfather, pseudo. Famous saying. Destroy first, then ask questions. Evaluation. Every civilization has its own myths and legends, and for the Cybertronian civilization, the giant ferocious beasts in the myths and tales, once suspected that they did not exist. It wasn't until the Decepticons found a fossil containing the giant ferocious gene that the giant ferocious beast reappeared. The rush into the sky, formed by the combination of 5 giant ferocious creatures, is terrifying in strength. As ancient beasts of the Cybertron civilization, the newly born giants merged into the sky. At the moment, they pounced on Niederhog, and the two huge creatures collided together, directly causing huge amounts of waves. The divine power was mixed with the energy of the super energy crystal, and at the moment all spread out. It was only the collision of this blow that the sky was smashed into the sky. A guy like you, with the appearance of a dragon, is still a robot in essence. How dare to appear in front of the great Nidhogg and look for death? Nidhogg roared angrily, and in the gaze that looked towards the sky, killing intent and astonishment were intertwined. Very strange, it smelled a trace of the same kind in front of the giant made up of 5 metal dragons, which was too weird. Chong Yunxiao made a few low roars, and suddenly rushed to Niederhog again. The battle between the two huge figures was fierce, and every moment there was a terrifying aftermath. Malekith stood in the distance, watching the battle coldly, his brows frowned, and he couldn't see through the endless variety of Cybertron stars. You stared at my planet for a long time, what are you thinking? A faint voice suddenly came. Malekith suddenly turned his head, his stature burst back, and looked at the person who suddenly appeared not far from him with a look of jealousy. Martin. Malekith looked suspicious. Encourage Sin to attack my world. Malekith, you are so courageous, just use your life to pay for it. Martin sneered, his body disappeared in place, and he rushed to Malekith in a sudden, raised his hand and punched, and in an instant, the nearby time-space was compressed suddenly. Maleka's face was gloomy, his figure quickly retreated, and he didn't want to fight Martin head-on. At least, he didn't want to fight him in person until the situation in the 9 realms became clear and the heavens returned to the world tree. On a battlefield of this scale, even the level Godfather can easily die. Hiss. Martin smashed the armor on Maleka's body with one blow, and continuously shortened the distance between the two sides in successive constantly attacks. Martin looked fierce, with murderous intent flashing in his eyes, and made up his mind to kill Maleka's. It's here. This old Yinbi is too troublesome, and the battle of the 10 realms is the curtain opened by this guy. On the other side, Xiao has been gradually suppressed by Niederhog. Although Xiao is strong, it is good to be able to stabilize the situation by fighting a top-level godfather like Nidhogg as soon as it was born. Martin doesn't need to go to the skies to win, he just needs to delay time. Bifrost came, and Optimus Prime also wielded his great sword, and slapped Niederhogg severely. 2 shapeshifting King Kong teamed up to besiege Niederhogg. I underestimated you. I didn't expect that the power you just built could actually have 3-level godfathers. Maleka's face was uncertain, and he was beaten back by Martin's strong attack. He tried to retreat several times, but he was interrupted by Martin and dragged him forcibly. Maleka threw out a dark magic and slammed it on Martin, but he saw a large amount of magic burst out. The momentum was shocking, but he could not cause any kind of damage to Martin. Boom. Martin gave a backhand punch, Maleka's face was black, and his whole body was beaten out. His powerful magic seemed extremely passive in front of this violent offensive. Maleka, this world is very big. You who only stared at the world tree all your life will end this life. Martin's voice was cold. Mahler Base sneered. Don't think that you have defeated Sithorn with infinite gems. It's true that you are the savior of this universe, but again, you are just a human after all. Martin faintly said. I am a human being, but I have won the destiny of this universe with one hand. Are you angry? You, who have lived for 1,000,000 years, can only condescend to be under me as a human. What is it like? When you were killed by my own hands, what about the moment of death? Maleka's face was gloomy, and he chanted a spell. After throwing a large piece of magic to confuse the approaching time and space, he was about to leave here directly. He didn't want to fight Martin. This kind of battle was meaningless to him. But Martin, his murderous intentions have already risen to the extreme, especially when he has the upper hand. He directly took out a holy object. Time stands still with the gun. The violent sound erupted, making Malkis feel that the strange fluctuations were thrilling. In an instant, a large amount of strange energy cut off the isolation between the nearby time-space and the outside world, and instantly enveloped Malkis. When I had the time gem, I almost never used this gun, because it was not very useful, but now, you think I don't have infinite gems, I am not me? Kill you, more than enough. Martin sneered. Looking at the man who was madly tearing everything around solidified with his own terrifying magic power, and the magic in his body gathered, although everything seemed to be slowed down several times, but with level godfathers in terms of strength, it is commendable to be able to do this step. Maleka, you trash, let the great Nidhogg come to rescue you. There was a roar, and Niederhogg flew his tail into the sky, and at the same time opened his mouth and spouted sacred fire, straight to Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime's expression changed, and he directly raised his huge sword to block him, and was blasted out by the harsh flame several light years away with a crash. Niederhogg took advantage of this gap, turned violently and rushed to Malekis. His face was full of impatience, and he glanced at Martin with fear. Powerful strength, weird weapon. A guy like Martin, Niederhogg who has survived for too long was unheard of. You can't save him, you have to die. Martin sneered in a low voice and raised the time-still gun again, imprisoning Malekis, who was about to shred the still area, again. At the same time, Martin originally shot one after another, with the powerful mobility and energy output of the Supreme God armor. All the vents came to Malekis, who had a distorted face. Niederhogg screamed and opened his mouth to spray flames at Martin. Martin directly kicked the huge amounts of the dragon. Optimus Prime and Xiao circled up again, leaving traces on the body of the dragon one after another. There was already a panic on Malekiz's face, and his black eyes were gradually covered with bloodshot eyes, which frantically triggered a magical riot, but unfortunately, this was of no use in front of Martin. The static area is released. Martin's blockbuster attack in one breath, at the moment also fell on Malekiz and the magic explosions. I will rule the entire world tree and unearth the mystery of the world tree. No one can hinder me. What's more, you are a human being. Malekiz let out a sharp roar, his face full of ferocious and unwillingness. That calmness had long since vanished. He couldn't believe that the little Cybertron could actually produce 3-level godfathers, let alone believe it. Facing Martin, he couldn't even escape. It's all because of that weird firearm, which can lock the time in a certain area. If he is not the level godfather, but the level single universe, the effect of this gun on him will be greatly weakened, because the universe god is the top of the universe, and the local time lock is not fatal to them. But for level godfather, it's too deadly. In an instant, Malkiz was wrapped in countless terrifying explosions. His surging magic power, at the moment, was also exploded. Many scars appeared on the surface of his body. This terrifying aftermath spread out. Some planets were blown up directly. On Na Cybertron, the magic ball has already opened its protective shield covering the world, and it has not been torn apart by the aftermath of the terrifying level Godfather's battle. No. Why is this happening? As a noble and elegant dark elf, Malekiz became extremely embarrassed at the moment. Roar. A figure forcibly rushed through the terrifying explosion, appeared in front of Malekiz, directly raised his hand and grabbed the opponent's face. Walk all the way. King of the Dark Elves, after you die, I will send all the Dark Elves to your burial. Snapped. The twisted and hateful head of Malekiz suddenly exploded at this moment and was directly squeezed by Martin. Malkiz was dead. Even at this point, he still couldn't believe that such a powerful self, the existence of level Godfather, didn't even have the ability to escape, and he died directly here. The culprit who triggered the Battle of the 10 Realms in one hand was violently killed by Martin. HMPH, dead a troublesome reptile, this world will be cleaner. Martin slowly retracted his palm and made a shock. The blood stained on his hand was instantly shaken away. Immediately, Martin collected Malekiz's body directly. The Academy of Sciences is studying the magical power of the World Tree, and the effect is impressive. The God of War Kratos is their most proud work, and now it is time to need more and more powerful original materials. A corpse of the Dark Elf of level Godfather must satisfy those scientists. Next, this is the Magic Dragon. This guy has lived for so long and gnawed on the roots of the tree for so long. He should know a lot about the World Tree. Don't say anything else, it's mixed. The body of negative divine power has huge amounts of value. Martin moved his gaze, and with an anatomical chilling feeling, it landed on Niederhog. His interest in this dragon is very, very great. Take a step back and take it back and imprison it as an ornament to show off Cybertron's martial arts. You damn things, get out of here. The great Niederhog has more important things to do. Nidhogg roared again and again, his huge body rammed like a giant mountain, and every time he forcibly attacked, he would knock the clouds and Optimus Prime into the air, throwing large pieces of broken parts into space. Both Optimus Prime and Xiao had scars all over their bodies, and their bodies were seriously damaged. You two step back and I will deal with this beast, Martin said lightly. Xiao glared at Niederhog fiercely, and said with an earn, "Damn black dragon, next time, I will call you father." This guy's negative divine power is very special, with strong corrosiveness, and faintly connected with the rule of the World Tree. Be careful. Optimus Prime whispered, and immediately raised the great sword. Bifrost descended and sent him and Chongyun back to Cybertron with a roar. Martin stood in front of Niederhog with a plain face, his eyes rolled indifferently, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. To be honest, he is really interested in this magic dragon. It is predicted that this guy will bring Ragnarok to the entire World Tree. One day in the future, this magic dragon will eat away the roots of the World Tree. The World Tree will collapse suddenly, and the 9 realms will collapse one after another. It's really an interesting prediction. Dragon of the Devouring World, Niederhog, you are qualified to be my mount. Martin tilted his head and looked at it for a moment, then said lightly. Niederhorn immediately spewed out a flame that incinerated the planet. The humble Midgard, you will endure the anger of Lord Niederhorn. Even the god Odin would not dare to speak to me like this before his death. So Odin is dead, but I'm alive. Martin slowly raised his head. Niederhog roared. His power was amazing. All the negative divine power surged, it moved its body, the wave rolled, as if it was going crazy. Just like this, it roared, and it flees madly into the distance. Stop fighting. This guy named Martin is really weird, and those robots are also very weird. Although Niederhog was arrogant, he was not a fool. Starscream didn't know how to break its negative mark and tore up the contract with it. Then, the two guys Optimus Prime and Chongyun Xiao actually possess the power of the level Godfather, although they are still very immature. Give it some time. Niederhog is 10,000% sure that these two robots to blast into scum. But this is too weird. A new force, a brand new species that has just been created not many years ago, actually has such great potential? Damn Martin. Don't think that you saved the universe and snatched the fate from Thanos. What can you do with the great Niederhog? The great Niederhog will never be a slave. The dragon roared loudly, as if about to violently fight Martin desperately, while running faster. Interesting. Martin raised the time-still gun, directly activated the driving system of the Supreme God armor, and quickly caught up with Nidhogg, who was running wildly. Martin casually squeezed the trigger under the shocked gaze of the opponent. Roar. A group of areas was cut off by the time-still gun, and the internal time was directly stopped. But faintly, there is a powerful antagonistic force rising from Niederhog. This magic dragon is struggling desperately. That terrifying negative divine power, with strong corrosiveness and pollution, is killing time sharply. The power of a stationary gun. You can't run. I can use this gun to imprison you here to the destruction of the universe. As long as you regularly replenish firearms energy and give you a shot at intervals, you will not be able to break free. When your divine power is exhausted, time is when you die. Just like now. Martin took a shot at the dragon. At the moment, the still area that was about to collapse, stabilized again and trapped the dragon. Niederhog almost vomited blood. This super-conventional technological weapon simply breaks its three views. It uses the power of pure technology to achieve this level. The time rule and energy rule are deduced to this level. Even some gods rely on the power of the universe. Arrive. In the end, it is Cybertron's sacred object, the second top creation, second only to the top 10 artifacts, and each artifact directly refers to the rule originally. Pick off your skin, tear down your bones, and cut your flesh and blood. It must be very valuable for research. Martin kept taking shots, sometimes using a static gun to trap the opponent, and at the same time he blasted out his various attacks, throwing them into the static area and hitting the dragon one after another. Nidhogg struggled in slow motion, opening his mouth and roaring, his blood-red eyes full of humiliation and killing intent. Enough of it. Gradually, on its skin tough enough to resist the supernova explosion, Martin was torn out many scars, and blood soaked with filthy divine power flowed out, corroding everything. Oh? Almost running out of energy. Martin fired another shot, only to find that the force was weak. You are dead. Without this gun, what can you do against me? You are dead, despicable Midgard. Niederhogg's spirits were vigorous, and all his supernatural powers came out, and he scolded Martin. But cursing and cursing, its voice became smaller and smaller, and finally came to a halt, with a dull face and a roaring mind. Martin took the time to stop the gun at random. In an instant, the fire source in his body gushed out endless energy, and the gun was recharged in an instant, and the surface of the gun lit up with a bright light again. What did you just say? Martin tilted his head and looked at the dragon, and then slowly refilled a few shots one after another, and then pained the killer. Every shot was extremely cruel, and he kept creating more hideous scars on Niederhogg's body. Finally, Niederhogger watched Martin slap another slap on the gun, and after charging the weird time gun, he couldn't stand it. Enough. Stop it, the great Niederhogg doesn't want to fight anymore. Damn Midgard, you managed to attract the attention of Niederhogg with this despicable method. Dog thief. I told you to stop. Niederhogger cursed, He was shocked by Martin's weird operation that he could charge infinitely at his fingertips, and the sense of seeing that the three views were subverted. It completely couldn't figure out why such a small human being had such a thing in his body. A vast and endless energy reserve. This is simply unreasonable. But Martin didn't mean to stop at all. The coldness on his face became more intense, and he shot from time to time, locking Nidhogg here, using his own strength to continuously create wounds on the dragon. In the end, the devil dragon's scolding voice gradually became quieter, replaced by a peaceful voice that was suppressed with all his might. It served. The noble head was lowered by this shameless tactic, and my heart was even more bitter. I didn't expect that the dignified world-swallowing dragon would end in embarrassment in this way after getting out of trouble. Hiss. With another scream, Martin left a horrible scar on its body, almost cut off the huge amounts of the dragon's body before he stopped. From now on, you will be my mount, and everything will obey my orders. Once you have other thoughts, I will take your skin off. Martin waved his hand to break up the still area, stepped out, and stood directly on the head of the dragon. With bursts of humiliation gnawing at the heart of the dragon, Nidhogg roared wildly in his heart, hatred, and the red eyes flashed with hatred and bloodthirsty red light, but his mouth said, I know, as long as you stop using that weapon, I will obey your orders. Martin glanced down at the guy, sneered at the corner of his mouth. Dissatisfied. It didn't matter if he didn't agree. He didn't expect this dragon to obey him sincerely. Anyway, he just found a transitional plaything. It was nothing at all. A major crisis ended here. Malekus, Niederhogg, and Queen Sind, the three powerful level godfathers, successively took control of Cybertron, but they were all defeated one by Martin. The three of them ended up miserably. One died on the spot and the other was killed by Martin. Imprisoned, one enslaved by Martin. The battle of the 10 realms that should have been chaotic for a long time, not long after the beginning, a few tricky guys bumped into Martin's steel plate, and they were wiped out. It's really interesting. Then, let's see when the war-torn worlds will end. Martin stood on top of the devil dragon's head, overlooking the entire world tree. In the dark, this huge amounts of tree-like phantom was present in front of him. This is a giant sacred tree that seems to traverse the entire universe. Back to Cybertron, I have something to ask you, Martin said lightly. Niederhogg looked unwilling. He could only suppress all the sinister thoughts in his heart, and flew in the direction of Cybertron with a muffled sound. Earth. The war has fallen into white hot, and the war witch will forcibly block Kamar Taj, fighting with many magicians of the earth in full swing, and that terrifying magic wave spreads all over the world. Puff. Steven flicked out a portal and cut a war witch into 2 pieces. He raised his hand and used a defensive magic to block several dark magics. The young supreme magician had an extremely ugly face. Looking around, the difficulty of these war witches was beyond imagination, and they deserved to be the #1 force under Malkis. But the rest of the world is also not peaceful. A large number of dark elves rushed to the earth and invaded all parts of the world. At the moment, major organizations also faced the enemy. The war was raging, and the whole earth was plunged into huge amounts of turbulence. The Spear Bureau, Kunlun, Atlantis, S.H.I.E.L.D., Avengers, Mutant, have all invested in this unprecedented scale of war, resisting powerful enemies from Otherworld. Suddenly, many dark elves moved for a while, and they began to recede like a tide, even with a kind of embarrassment and rush, as if something major happened behind them. What happened? This guy retired before the armor I just developed. Tony looked surprised. Kamar Taj. Steven caught a war witch with solemn expression, and asked in a deep voice, tell me, why did you retreat? Someone has attacked our world. The despicable fire demons betrayed us. These filthy things are dead. They will be cruelly exterminated by Lord Malekis. This witch had a bitter expression on her face. Obviously, compared to the Earthlings who were originally enemies, those who were supposed to be allies but directly stabbed their dark elves in their backs are more worthy of hatred. Steven put the witch in jail, lost in thought. Wang Shen said, these guys are not credible, we should build a stronger magic circle as soon as possible. Steven nodded slightly, frowning. What are you thinking about? Mordo asks. I'm thinking about what role Cybertron, who replaced Asgard, is playing in this war that swept the world tree. and what Martin will do in the face of this chaos. Stephen looked at the sky and took a deep breath, but in the end he didn't say anything, and immediately began to command the magician to condense the corpses of his companions, constantly repairing the broken magic circle. Walter Alheim. The world of Dark Elves. At the moment, the main force has already been exhausted, and the rest are old, weak, sick and disabled. But when Queen Sind suddenly came in with a terrifying army of fire demons, all the Dark Elves were shocked. Sind, are you crazy? You are betraying our covenant, a Dark Elf scolded. In the next second, he was beaten to death by Queen Sind with a whip. Covenant. Isn't the covenant to be torn apart? Who knows what Malkies is? Queen Sind had a hideous look, and the anger of being enslaved by Martin continued to rise. At the moment all good lees vent to these Dark Elves. In an instant, the entire Wat Alheim turned into a sea of flames, and countless Dark Elves were swept by the terrifying Fire Demon Legion, screaming on the spot and turned into a ball of flames. This was a cruel massacre, and from the very beginning it was a massacre of extermination, leaving no alive or captives. These fire demons were bathed in blood and wailing. Why didn't Malekus come back? And an old dark elf looked at the world turned into a sea of flames, closed his eyes in pain, and finally activated a certain machine, sending out a signal containing a lot of information. This was something that Malkies had secretly arranged. After noticing that Malkies hadn't returned, the old elf had already guessed in his heart, and activated the device without hesitation. The signal sent out was quickly passed to a certain place. Heaven. The Earth, an ancient country in the east. The special forces of the Spear Bureau also fell into a bitter battle. Even if there are a large number of Superman types, they are facing wars that are erupting all over the country. In particular, the opponent is still a very powerful Dark Elf in terms of strength and technology, and a powerful Spear Bureau also fell into a passive situation for a while. Until a superhero named Monkey King, carrying a castrated version of the wishful golden cudgel, fiercely against the Dark Elves' magic and technological cannons, fighting the risk of serious injuries, rushed out in one fell swoop, piercing the Dark Elves' defense lines, abruptly defeated a fleet of Dark Elves and won a vital partial victory. Yugi is getting more and more vigorous as the Monkey King, not to mention the strength, but also reckless. Saber slowly put away the two sharp blades in his hand, and praised it. More superheroes came over, surrounded by Monkey King, the war hero. Monkey King just smiled. He looked normal. But only he knew in his heart that he could become so strong in a short period of time, and that Sun Wukong had helped him too much. Just so, it's enough to beat a dark elf with so much strength. If I do it myself, just these trash elves can kill them with one hand. Sitting with huge amounts of hands on his shoulders, the monkey groaned as he watched Monkey King come in. I'm not you. Monkey King scratched his head hurt. The character of this monkey is too irritable. By the way, when will you be willing to leave the earth? I have been living in my house, and sooner or later I will be discovered by the organization. Monkey King said with a headache. The monkey looked at Monkey King with a surprised look, with surprise and weirdness in his eyes. What's wrong? Sun Wukong was a little uneasy.
Do you think that the Spear Bureau will not find my existence until now? The monkey snorted coldly. Your shit director. Yes, that guy named Zheng Xian is also an old treacherous and cunning man, relying on the methods of the Spear Bureau. He had noticed me a long time ago, but he hasn't said it, deliberately ignoring me.
Sun Wukong's face changed. You have been with me from the beginning. How can outsiders find out? His voice suddenly stopped. The monkey sneered. Think of it. The rapid growth of strength, the ever-growing heavenly power, and usually spend less time on training ground, and spend more time at home. As long as that Zheng Xian's brain, if you are a little more flexible, you will know that you have a problem, but the smartest thing about him is to pretend that he doesn't know, which gives both parties more leeway. Monkey King fell into silence. After a while, he said bitterly, You were right, I have been lying to myself. The monkey snorted coldly, with an arrogant look on his face. Although he is just a duplication of Velis Hair now, he is also the god of war in the heaven after all, and his character will not change. Bang bang bang. There was a knock on the door. The monkey directly turned his head first, and struck him with a gaze. with a soft sound, the door opened spontaneously. With a gentle smile like a good old man, Zhang Xian smiled and poked his head in. Is it convenient for me to come in for a cup of tea? Inconvenient, get out. The monkey sneered. Yeah. Zhang Xian came in cheeky as if he had been promised, and the smile on his face remained unchanged. As the head of the Sacred Spear Bureau, you don't have to have other skills, and you must have a thick skin, thicker than the Earth's crust. Director Zhang. Sun Wukong's face was unnatural and he was at a loss. It's okay. Sit. Let me guess. This one is the Monkey King in the fairy tale. Monkey King can be trained as a pivotal superhero by Your Excellency. I have never had time to thank him. Zhang Xian smiled. Just as when he returned to his home, he picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea. Monkey King snorted coldly, too lazy to pay attention to this guy. It is true that this type of old yin ratio is not what he is good at dealing with, especially when looking at this smiling guy. He clearly gave him a kind of facing the Antarctic fairy. Both the sense of sight, they are all of the same type, and they are all Sao Dan things that stabbed a knife in the back. So, I'm on the subject. I heard that the major Protoss are not doing well, and they were sniped by Martin. Zhang Xian tasted the tea. The smile on his face slowly faded, and said lightly. The monkey looked down at this guy and said, your news is really backward. To be precise, apart from heaven, the other Protoss were killed by the lunatic with unknown purpose. Why did he do this? You ask me, who do I ask? We also want to know what he is going crazy, insisting on pursuing the extinction of the Protoss. The monkey grunted angrily. Dog thief Martin, ruin my home. If it weren't for this dog thief, heaven would never have to hide. Zhang Xian's eyes were narrowed, and the light of wisdom flashed. In an instant, one after another guesses flashed through his mind, thoughtfully. So, does he want to conduct an unknown experiment? Zhang Xian frowned and thought. Some of the causal links he hadn't figured out yet, and vital information links were cut off. But it doesn't matter, just think about it later. I want to know why the Dark Elves come to invade the Earth, and what role your heavens play in this melee. Zhang Xian raised his head and looked at the big monkey, and there was a kind of indifference in those eyes. He definitely has the confidence that even if he is killed, he will immediately carry out the cloning plan and the backup consciousness transfer plan, and he will be resurrected directly. And around the house, thousands of Supermans had already surrounded this place. If there was an accident, they would kill the monkey on the spot. Ghosts like gods must give in front of people. This is Zhang Xian's consciousness. I don't know, the war broke out suddenly. Anyway, it has nothing to do with our heavenly court. I just came to the Earth to inquire about the situation. It has nothing to do with me. The monkey was also annoyed and said angrily. The atmosphere was a bit stiff for a while. Monkey King looked at the director for a while, then looked at the monkey again. His brain hurt even worse.
After a while, the monkey's eyes widened suddenly, looked up in a certain direction, and got up suddenly, hitting the ceiling with one head, making a roar of huge amounts of
boom. There were breaking doors in all directions, and a large number of superheroes belonging to the Spear Bureau slew in and surrounded the monkeys.
Stop. Zhang Xian waved his hand, with a calm face from beginning to end. At the moment, he looked at the monkey and said lightly, what did you find?
The 10th realm is back. The monkey said in a deep voice. What? Zhang Xian frowned. The world tree should have 10 worlds, but a major event broke out that year. The god King Odin, who was still at its peak, launched a war of gods under the anger, defeating the 10th world and exiled the world tree. Now, they are back. Heaven is back. Heaven, the 10th realm of the world tree, was expelled by Odin, the god king at his peak, and finally returned at this moment. At the moment when the world was revealed, the sacred light shone everywhere, ethereal chants resounded through the world, and countless bodies were surging with radiant angel, flying around heaven. It seems that the world in the Bible has turned into reality. When heaven appeared, many people were stunned, and some people directly raised roar God, bowed down again and again, and offered pious faith. This is heaven. That's it, that guy Malkis has already colluded heaven. Queen Sind lifted up the last dark elf from Wat Alheim, and said with a sneer, what else did Malekith order? What did you do? He will kill all the fire demons, you despicable ghosts. The old elf cursed. With a squeak, Queen Sin pinched the guy's neck, then threw it aside, sneered and looked down at the surroundings. The entire Walter Alheim has been killed by her army. The corpses of countless dark elves are everywhere, and the whole world has turned into hell. At the moment, the army of dark elves that attacked other worlds has been laid. Watching this scene eagerly. Another great war broke out. The return of heaven gave these dark elves the last support. Cybertron. It turns out that Malekith has contacted heaven. Huh, an idiot. The creatures of heaven are the most shameless and cruel. This guy is crazy. Nidhogg lay down in front of Martin, with a heat wave from his nostrils, disdainful. Take a look. Martin looked into the distance, watching in a holy and noble posture. The whole world had broken into the paradise of the World Tree domain, with a look of indifference. Heaven, the world of paradise, in the Marvel event, the Battle of the 10 Realms, did come back and appeared on the stage. It was a world that stood in the Malekith camp. However, Malekith is now dead, and Niederhogg and Queen Sind are enslaved by him. It is a paradise, and there is no wave of trouble. A burst of beautiful singing came, with a kind of enchantment and spiritual hints that went straight to the soul, resounding in many areas of the World Tree. Martin was expressionless, just a movement in his heart. In an instant, all of Cybertron's power burst out, and the magic ball moved, forcibly cutting off these damn singing. Bewitching my people, looking for death. I am very interested in these birdmen, but I don't know if they can sing these wonderful hymns when I put them on the experimental platform. A bit of cold light flashed in Martin's eyes, and the murderous intent was permeated. These ghosts that are neither human nor bird should be killed. So, do you want to slaughter this world? Nidhogg urged maliciously. Go to war. You are the vanguard, the grand Joker drama of the Battle of the 10 Realms. It's time to come to an end. Martin stomped hard, and Niederhogg had to suppress the humiliation in his heart, roared up to the sky, flapped his wings and flew up. In an instant, countless shape-shifting diamonds were assembled. War goal. Heaven. Collect war data in real time and capture the indigenous creatures of heaven, Angel. Orders were passed on, and soon, a large number of troops gathered. Optimus Prime lifted the great sword high, and Bifrost descended suddenly, sending a large number of troops to heaven in a bang. In the paradise that has just entered the World Tree, countless angels are still praising this sacred world loudly. They are excited, and looking forward to this return. The Queen of Heaven sits on the throne, smiling and looking down at this scene. She almost saw the scene where heaven ruled the World Tree, just like what Odin did many years ago. World Tree. What a wonderful world, such a world should belong to my heaven. But the next moment, before they could confuse more lives with their singing, countless armies suddenly descended here. The colorful glow dissipated, and a tall steel figure stood, and the leader stepped on the terrifying dragon, slowly raising his head, staring indifferently ahead. The singing stopped abruptly. Are you the guy who replaced Odin? The Queen of Heaven looked ugly. Many angels were also confused for a moment. Martin raised his hand and said lightly, kill them all, these birdmen are rare experimental materials. In an instant, the ready-made shape-shifting King Kong suddenly showed a terrifying side, and began to make a horrible blow, and at the same time, the full firepower output was launched. In an instant, countless warriors had already killed a large number of angels. A brand new world-class war broke out, and this time, Martin took the initiative to invade other worlds with his army. The Queen of Heaven roared, immediately picked up the scepter, and directly killed Martin, and the pressure of the level Godfather burst out. Martin hit it with a punch, and there was a loud noise, and the Queen of Paradise was directly smashed back by Martin with a punch. After that, Martin quickly backed away and slapped Nidhogg with a slap. Nidhogg was extremely dissatisfied, but he had no choice but to scream and rush towards the Queen of Heaven. You, the dragon, should be on my side, subverting the existing order. Why did you bastard take refuge in Martin? The Queen of Heaven was frightened, and the holy light shot out, and she fought with this dragon. The demon dragon that exploded with all its strength showed terrifying combat power. The roots of the tree that had been gnawed for so many years were not gnawed in vain. Even if the serious injuries on the body had not been healed, it suppressed the Queen of Heaven from the beginning. Martin looked at the entire battlefield indifferently, and shot some powerful angels from time to time. Every time he shot, he could blast a large fragment of limbs and severed arms. You wicked person under the world tree needs to be judged by the holy light. A big angel rushed over angrily, yelling loudly. Martin turned his head calmly, and the next second, his figure appeared behind the big angel, raised his hand and grabbed it, and with a light force, he tore off the wings in front of him alive. There was a screaming scream. Birdman is Birdman. What do you have to call angel? Your creatures are actually biological weapons manufactured in batches using bird genes and human genes? Martin looked at the screaming big angel, and smashed it into flesh with a punch, only then slightly shook his head. The whole heaven is caught in huge amounts of war. They have just returned and have not yet enjoyed the supreme glory of the 9 realms of King's Landing. At this moment, they have been hit by a head-on, countless angels are wailing, and the whole heaven is crying. The Queen of Paradise has a splitting eye, yelling and yelling at Martin, but still can't save the defeat. Go to hell. Nidhogg bit it up, and after smashing the head of the Queen of Heaven with a creak, the result of this war is doomed. Under the silent gaze of the many existences of the world tree, the powerfully returning heaven has completely fallen at this moment, surrounded by endless souls. The bustling sacred heaven is screaming screams. Countless noble angels were brutally defeated by many shapeshifting King Kong, and they attacked several times. They directly drew out a broad sword and an épée, and divided countless angels into corpses on the spot. Unlucky heaven, it can only be said that he bumped his head on the steel plate and was stared at by Martin. The entire paradise world is falling, from high to the top, crashing continuously, falling toward the bottom of the world tree, turning into a terrifying meteor, and collapsed in a sudden. Everything seemed particularly gorgeous. This scene was seen by countless beings in the entire 9 realms. One world was destroyed. Martin stepped on Niederhogg and looked down at this scene indifferently, raising his hand to return the countless shapeshifting King Kong and angel corpses to Cybertron. You ruined another world. What's your next goal? Warnerheim, Arnavita. The devil dragon suddenly let out a low laugh, with a hint of depressed pleasure in the voice. Boom. Martin kicked the dragon's head fiercely, and said indifferently, Heaven has crashed. Surely you got a lot of benefits, right? Benefit? What benefit? No, it doesn't exist, there is no such thing. Molong denied immediately. Martin had no expression on his face, just glanced at the cunning and cruel dragon, and drove the opponent back to Cybertron. It is also time to find a way to study this magic dragon, at least to figure out the supernatural power rule of the world tree. Well, it would be interesting if you could collect these 3-generation gods and bring out a guy closest to the 2nd-generation gods. Martin looked calm. If it weren't for those 2nd-generation gods, he wouldn't have spent such a great effort. The battle with Sithorn made him feel the horror of the 2nd-generation gods, and more importantly, between him and Sithorn. The war in China is not over at all. Sooner or later, a desperate fight will be made in the future. The more you understand the 2nd-generation gods, the more sure you will eventually completely obliterate Sithorn. Although the multi-level universe is difficult to kill, you can still find a way to completely kill it with a little thought. Martin left with his army, but what was left to the 9 realms was endless fear and tremor. At this time, the news of Malkis's death in the battle quickly spread, and as many beings knew, this was another terrifying earthquake. That Midgard man, even without infinite gems, is still so terrifying. Level Godfather is not his opponent at all. Unless the cosmic gods act on Martin. Impossible. Martin has a high probability of getting the destiny of this era. Those cosmic gods will not fight against the will of the entire universe. With jealous gazes, they looked at Martin's terrifying figure in fear, and even if they were separated for a long time, they could feel the terrifying pressure on Martin. This is the honorable position established by the corpses of many gods. The entire 9 realms war, at the moment, suddenly frustrated. In front of the more terrifying Martin, their various actions seemed to have lost their meaning in an instant. Even the lead Malekis was killed by Martin, even the prophesied Ragnarok Niederhogg was enslaved by Martin. The battle of the 10 realms was completely ruined by Martin, the macho man from the sky, In the same way, the battle situation was more tragic to some extent. The heaven crashed and fell straight to the bottom of the world tree. There was no possibility of rising again. Angel in it was also slaughtered. The dark elves were also on the verge of being annihilated. The fire demons took advantage of the emptiness and slaughtered them. The leader Malkis also died. The fire demons were completely enslaved by that Martin. The entire 9 realms are under Martin's shadow. At this moment, Martin's prestige has surpassed the god Odin, becoming the uncrowned king under the entire world tree. The final question is, what's the secret of the supernatural power rule of the world tree? With a bang, Martin threw Nidhogg to the ground, sneered again and again, murderous intent surged, and even raised his hand to tear out a wound on Nidhogg's body and took out a lot of blood. Asshole, do you want to die? The great Nidhogg should not be subjected to such humiliation. Niederhogg rage roared, struggling frantically, but only roaring and struggling. At the moment, the Global Academy of Sciences has already started to collect the corpses of the major Protoss, frantically unfolding genetic engineering, trying to decipher the life codes of these Protoss, especially to find the secret that they can possess the power of the world tree. There is no doubt that the indigenous life forms born in the world tree are protected by the original rule of the world tree. What the scientists of the Academy of Sciences have to do is to find out this principle and make use of it. Roar. The space bridge started, and a slender figure exuding a strong smell of blood came out from it. Queen Sind is here. I have kept my promise and killed all the dark elves in Wat Alheim. Queen Sind exuded a murderous aura that no one would enter. She went straight to Martin, and said with an ugly face. Very well, as a reward for you, I allow you to continue to be the king of the Fire Demon clan and rule Muspelheim. Martin said lightly, with a look of admiration on his face. But this made Queen Sind even more angry, and she snarled. I was originally the king of the Fire Demon clan, and I originally ruled Muspelheim. You don't need a nasty fellow to canonize me. What do you think you are? Is the king of the 9 worlds. You are not even a Protoss, you don't even have the power of the world tree in your body. Then I will kill you and let Serta rule Muspelheim. Presumably your father would be happy to see this scene. Martin said seriously. Queen Sind's face was even more ugly, with a deep suffocation. Come with me and show you a good thing. This is also the experiment that satisfies me the most so far. Martin suddenly got up, stretched his waist greatly, and stepped directly on Niederhogg, who was dozing on the side. After a kick, he said calmly, go to the Karen arena. The great Nidhogg will never be a slave. The devil dragon roared awe-inspiringly, and then flew up violently. Queen Sind's eyes jumped, and she bit her scalp to keep up. Soon, huge amounts of Karen arena appeared in front of us, and the voices were full of people, even if the dark clouds of the war have not completely dissipated. But some militant guys have already gathered here, taking advantage of the spare time of the war, enjoy fighting fiercely. Martin was in the air, looking down, raised his hand, and said, that man, named Kratos, from Olympus, is the most satisfying work for me at the moment. In him, you will see to a miracle.